So we're not discussing Yusuf, we're discussing which prophet? Musa. But this general is saying to Fir'aun, Musa should remind you of Yusuf. So according to them, there's a connection between Musa and Yusuf alayhi salam. And I was really intrigued by that. I was really shocked by that. That even they're not even Muslim. They study Egyptian history. They're not people of the book. You know, Tawrat and Injil haven't even been revealed yet. And yet they recognize there's a connection between Yusuf and Musa alayhi salam. The other interesting thing, the reason I was so shocked by it is a few years ago when I started teaching story nights, because I was fascinated by how powerfully Quran tells stories. The first story night I created was the story of Musa alayhi salam from Surah Al-Qasas. Surah Al-Qasas, 28th surah of the Quran. It's an interesting name, Surah Al-Qasas. And the thing is, that name, which means stories, is actually found in the beginning of Surah Yusuf. نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. So this one is called Al-Qasas, and that one starts with Al-Qasas. And yet this one is about Musa, and that one is about Yusuf alayhi salam. So even from the Quran's wording point of view, there seemed to be some connection between these two. And then when I got to Surah Ghafir, and even one of their generals said, Musa and Yusuf are connected. I'm like, then they're definitely connected. We have to explore that connection deeper. So this brief session is going to be my exploration of how Musa and Yusuf alayhi salam, who are generations apart from each other. They're not contemporaries of each other. Musa alayhi salam is actually a late descendant of Yusuf alayhi salam, are connected in the way the Quran connects them. So let's begin. Let's start with the history of it. The first observation, and I'm going to read these to you, by the way, and I'm not going to quote a lot of Quran. This is all from the Quran, but to keep the conversation smooth, I won't be giving you the Arabic citations. I'll be probably writing a book on this, inshallah ta'ala, and that'll include all of the citations, maybe an exhaustive lecture. But for now, I just want you to even if you don't know any Arabic, that's okay. Or you're not hearing the quotes, that's okay. Those of you that are familiar with Quran will find the ayahs in your head anyway, as I say this. Okay? Anyway, so let's start with the history. Yusuf alayhi salam begins outside Egypt. His story begins outside Egypt, and it ends inside Egypt. While Musa alayhi salam's story begins in Egypt and ends outside Egypt. Okay? Between the two, we learn how Banu Israel, the Israelites, how did they come to Egypt, and then we learn how did they get out of Egypt. Okay? Yusuf alayhi salam started as a shepherd. He started as a shepherd outside Egypt. Okay? So he was with his family and, with his brothers. And he ended up becoming a royalty inside Egypt. Musa alayhi salam started as a royalty inside Egypt and left to Madian and became a shepherd outside Egypt. Okay? One of them teaches you how did Banu Israel become a settled nation in Egypt. How did they get honor? Because they were honored by Yusuf alayhi salam. The other one teaches you how they escaped dishonor by getting away from Egypt. Now, let's talk about their parents. When you study the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, it starts off with a father. Yusuf's story starts with a father concerned for his son. He's telling his son, you've seen a dream, don't tell your brothers, I'm afraid for you, etc., etc., right? Musa alayhi salam's story starts off with a mother concerned for her son. And when you study the story of Yusuf, the question arises, you notice the deliberate absence. I'm just reading through here. When studying Yusuf, you notice the deliberate absence of the mention of his mother. Like, where's Yusuf's mom? She's never mentioned. And you wonder, why not? And then you get the same question when you study Musa alayhi salam, you notice the deliberate absence of the mention of his father. This is perhaps the Quran's way of telling us to focus on one single parent's role at a time and extract wisdom from what is said about each individual, one at a time. I like to tell my students when I share this, it's like Allah said, let me tell you a mom's story, and separately I'll tell you a dad's story. The dad's story is Yusuf, the mom's story is Musa alayhi salam, so you can focus on both roles separately. Yusuf's father and Musa's mother are concerned about the safety of their sons, both of them. They're afraid for the safety. That's the concern that they have, particularly dealing with safety. Yusuf's father is expressing his love and his affection and his protection by being an attentive listener. Because, Yusuf came and told him a dream. So he's showing love to his son by being a good listener. And then an advisor, while Musa's mom shows her love by holding and feeding the baby, physically loving the child. Okay? Between the two, you get the complete picture of what parents' love is like. On the one hand, they're supposed to listen, counsel, advise. protect you this way with their words, and the other, they're physically supposed to hug you, hold you, feed you. So between the two of them, the entire role of parenting is covered. Between the two, you get the complete spectrum of parental love: physical, emotional, spiritually nurturing, and affectionate. Perhaps this is also an insight on aspects of the roles of mothers and fathers that each should pay extra attention to. Like fathers should pay extra attention to not just hugging your kid and letting them go, but talking to them more. Okay? That's maybe some extra effort on your part. And moms, yes, you're cleaning and you're cooking and you're disciplining and did you do your homework, but it's also important to throw in some hugs and love and kisses to do that too. That's an important role for the mom. Just as Yusuf's father reluctantly lets his son go with his brothers. Remember, Yusuf's father let the sons go, but kind of not openly, reluctantly. Musa's mother reluctantly let her son go. Allah Azza wa Jalla revealed to her, she let her go. By contrast, one was persuaded by the other's sons, meaning Yusuf, let him go. His brothers persuaded him, right? While the other was inspired by Allah to do it. So in one case, let him go. Who's telling you let him go? Human beings, family members. The other one, who's telling you let him go? Allah is telling you let him go. Okay, Musa, Allah is telling him let him go. Yusuf's father cries out for his son, while Musa's mother's heart was given strength. There's a contrast between when a parent can't hold it and when a parent can hold it. So she wouldn't cry out for her son. And by the way, Musa, she would have cried too. Allah says, لَوْلَا أَرَّبَطْنَا عَلَى قَلْبِهَا. Because part of saving his life was she had to hold back her emotions. The father is described as having lost his eyesight out of grief over Yusuf alayhi salam. وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ. While the mother is described as reunited with her baby, كَيْ تَقَرَّ عَيْنُهَا, her eyes become cool. One loses the eyesight, the other's eyes become cool. When his brothers came insisting to take him, Yaqub, their father, expressed sorrow over the idea that they would take him and the fear over eating the wolf. This is kind of a subtle thing to understand. Pay attention to this. Yusuf's father, Yaqub, said two things. He said, it makes me sad that you want to take him. Sad that you want to take him. And I'm afraid a wolf will eat him. Sad and afraid. Two feelings, okay? Musa's mother is given strength from Allah to not be afraid and not be sad. Same two emotions in reverse order. Allah says, "La takhafi wa la tahzan." Okay? The same two emotions, but in reverse order. Yusuf's father was completely out of options on what to do. Yeah, he had his sons came back with a shirt, and his sons know what they did, and there's no way he can find out. So he says, "Sabrun jameel." All I can do now is what? Sabr. Musa's mother had some, helpful children. She had a daughter. So she took whatever means she could. We're learning sometimes you're out of options, then the only thing you can do is what? Sabr jameel. But even if you have the smallest chance, like, what are the chances a little girl is going to save her baby brother? But even if you have the smallest chance, you take it. You take it. And a father knows and a mother knows her children. Right? He knows his sons, even if I yell at them and say, I know you're lying, go get him. They're not going to get him. There's no point. That's not going to happen. He knows his kids already. And the mother knows her daughter, she's capable. So she sends her out. Okay? Now, Yusuf's father was completely out of, and I mentioned that one. Okay, this is now up to number 12. There's a lot. Okay. The father keeps hope alive even without revelation of Yusuf, while the mother keeps hope alive because of the revelation that came to her. Meaning the father had no idea. Yaqub had no idea Yusuf will ever come back. Allah didn't tell him. The mother, Allah told her immediately, don't worry, I'll return him to you. Put him in the basket, I'll get him returned. Okay? Revelation does come to the father, but comes at the very end of his trial, when the revelation that came to the mother came at the very onset of the trial. At the very end of the story of Yaqub, finally he gets the qamis, and from it he knows, Ajiduri ha Yusuf. That's revelation from Allah. But with the mother, even before she let him go, she knew the reunification is going to happen. It is an official order issued through an Egyptian palace in the story of Yusuf that calls for the reunion of the family. Meaning, what I mean by that is, Yusuf alayhi salam became a minister. And then as a minister, he ordered that his family should be moved here. So official government order that the family should move here. Just as an order of the queen from the Egyptian palace calls for the reunion of Musa's family. So the official order to reunite that family, and an official order, now this woman's going to live here because she's going to feed this child. So both were reunited by the official order from the Egyptian palace. While Yusuf alayhi salam, the minister, wants the reunion, Musa alayhi salam, the prince, needs the reunion. What do I mean? Yusuf alayhi salam is separated from his family. He's emotionally missing them. But he can still live without them. So he doesn't need it, he what? Wants it. It's an emotional need, if anything. Musa alayhi salam doesn't have an emotional need, he has a physical need. He won't drink the milk of any other woman. He's going to starve to death. So one fulfills the emotional need, the other fulfills the physical need by wanting them back, by the reunification. Let's talk about their siblings. As his sons persuaded Yaqub alayhi salam to let Yusuf go, they gave him logical reasons why things will be fine. No harm will come to him. What did they say? Nahnu usba, we're a big group. Well, nothing's going to happen to him. Let him play. How is anything going to happen to him when we're around? That was their rationale, right? So now, Musa's mother, to let him go, Allah gave her what was at face value completely illogical. Put a baby in a box and push it into a river. The brothers of Yusuf gave very logical reasons. But Allah, who told Musa's mom to let him go, gave no logical reasons. Just put him in a basket and put it in a river. What mother here is going to take a baby and put it in a basket or a box and put it in a swimming pool? Or put it in a lake, much less put it in a river with turbulent water? Doesn't make any sense. Allah's command seems like it made no sense. It made no sense to me, but you have to trust it because it's from who? Allah. And sometimes people can give very logical arguments, but be careful and don't trust them over your gut. Sometimes they can give you lots of really good reasons. You're like, but no. You see, the one who gave all these good reasons, the child was lost. Allah gave a completely illogical plan, the child was reunited. Right? So there's a contrast between those two. Yusuf's father warns him to keep this exchange a secret from his brothers. Don't tell your brothers this dream. Musa's mother instructs her daughter to keep the identity of her brother a secret. Some family I know. Not my brother, not my mother, some family. Just like there was a secret here, there was a secret there. Okay? Sometimes it's best to keep things from certain kids, and other times you have to entrust a child with heavy secrets. Your parents have to have the wisdom to know who and when to make the right call. Brothers leave the house to harm a sibling. Which story is that? When the brothers leave the house to harm a sibling? Yusuf. Sister leaves the house to help a sibling. Musa alayhi salam. Brothers abandon Yusuf in the well, rationalizing that some caravan will get him. While the sister doesn't abandon, the sister follows him as long as she can, and she stays outside until she knows her baby brother is okay. So one group of siblings abandoned and walked away. The other one stayed there as long as they could, meaning the sister. In Yusuf's family, the cause of the separation is the brothers. Yes? In Musa's family, the cause of the reunion is the older sister. SubhanAllah. The brothers violate their father's trust, and the sister upholds the mother's trust. The brothers talked back to their father and gave him a long explanation of how he has nothing to worry about. I've mentioned this before. The sister in Musa's story silently obeyed the mother, even though the mother said what? Actually, what the mother said is illogical. You see, the baby was in the river, a floating box. She said to the daughter, "Qussihi, follow him step by step." Follow him, step. Qassa is a step in Arabic. Okay? Qussihi, follow him step by step. How do you follow something step by step in the water? That makes no sense. This girl should have been like, actually, mom, that's like illogical. You're supposed to, you might swim after him. I can follow along the river, but that wouldn't be qassa because I'm not following him step by step. I'm going along with him, right? So, and actually, Allah didn't say, قُصِّيهِ فَقَصَّتْهُ. Right? Follow him, so she followed him. No. فَبَصُرَتْ بِهِ عَنْ جُنُوبٍ وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. She kept an eye on him from the side. Mom didn't say keep an eye on the side. What did mom say? Follow him. But this is the point I'm getting at in this, is that when the sons talked to Yaqub, they gave him lots of logical reasons. The girl could have given logical reasons why that's impossible. But she was quiet and she listened and she understood. Mom is in panic right now. She's saying crazy things. Follow him in the water. I understand, Mom. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you which socks I should wear. Should I wear the matching shoes? Oh my God, I haven't finished my homework. Should I still go? No. I'm just going to go. I got this, Mom. Don't worry about it. I got it. So she took care of it. She took independent initiative. Okay? Anyhow, Perhaps there's insight here for children who don't take serious instructions of their parents and talk back, dismissing them. Because the ones who just talked back messed up, and the one who just followed and didn't have to be given, they say in Arabic, "Arsil hakiman wala tulsi." They say, give a smart person instructions and then don't keep counseling them. In other words, if I told you, can you get me a gallon of milk? I'm not going to say, take a right at this street, take a left at this one, park over here, look both ways before you walk into the store, pay with cash, do this. No, I got it. I get the milk. Don't worry about it. When we tell our kids to do something, give them independence. Let them figure it out. Don't follow on every single step. So this is kind of what we learned from the story of how Musa's mom told his sister. Anyway, the brothers return home with a creative story to justify his absence. The sister brings back the wet nurses to her home with a creative story to justify the reunion. One justified the separation, the other justified the reunion. Yusuf alayhi salam, the child, was inspired with the message that the family will reunite them. The family will be reunited. When he was in the well, Allah Azza wa Jalla told him this family will be reunited, and you will tell them about this. On the flip side, so in this story, the child was told that the reunion will happen. In the other story, the mother was told, the parent was told, the reunion will happen. Now let's talk about the journey of these kids. Yusuf alayhi salam will be reunited with his family years later. Musa alayhi salam will be reunited with his mother hours later. Because he's thirsty, a few hours later they're reunited. Sometimes Allah will give you relief in hours, in minutes. Sometimes Allah will give you relief in years. That's up to Allah. That's Allah's plan. That's not up to us. Yusuf alayhi salam ends up in water, stagnant water. Musa alayhi salam ends up in flowing water, a river, both kinds of water. People come to the well to get to get Yusuf. And the Musa alayhi salam actually goes to the people himself. The basket gets delivered itself. Musa is delivered to those who will be retrieving him. Both were at the risk of drowning. Both got rescued. The crooks sold Yusuf for a small price. And they had no idea who they're dealing with. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, Quran said. They had no clue. The Fir'aun, Haman, and their armies let Musa live. Quran says what? وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, and they didn't realize it. Just like the crooks didn't realize, these criminals did not realize. Yusuf ends up in the possession of an influential man in Egypt, the minister. Yusuf ended up with Al-Aziz, remember? Musa ends up in the possession of an influential woman, Pharaoh's wife. Both end up in elite Egyptian housing. The minister presents Yusuf to his wife. Aziz took Yusuf to his wife. On the other side, Imra'at Fir'aun took him to the husband. So there's a scene where the husband presents the child to the wife, and the other one, there's a scene where the wife presents the child to the husband. The wife has misguided, I don't know if I'll say this later, if I skipped it, I'll tell you now. They both said the same thing. Actually, it's coming up. I'm pretty sure I wrote it. I'd be really disappointed in myself if I didn't write it, so I'm going to hold myself to it. Okay. Both end up in the elite, I already mentioned that. The wife has misguided love for Yusuf. The wife of the minister has misguided love for Yusuf, while Fir'aun has divinely inspired love, guided love for Musa. Fir'aun is misguided in everything. But one thing he got guidance from Allah is what? Love of Musa. وَأَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِنِّي وَلِذَلِكَ لَمْ يَقْتُلْهُ. You couldn't kill him. You couldn't kill him because Allah guided a love in the heart of Fir'aun for Musa alayhi salam until the very end when he had to weigh between his kingdom and Musa. Then he said, fine, I'll kill Musa. But until then, even though they kept telling him, how are you letting Musa go? Why are you letting him go? He couldn't get himself to kill him. Anyway, when presenting Yusuf to his wife, the husband said, maybe he could be of service to us or we could adopt him. This is an important contrast. See, the minister came with Yusuf, told his wife, listen, there's a kid, he's pretty good. There's two options. We could adopt him or he could be a servant. If you adopt him, we'll treat him as a son, or we'll keep him as a butler, a servant, right? When Imra'at Fir'aun, the wife of Fir'aun, Asiya, when she went to Fir'aun, she said what? Asa an yanfa'ana aw nattakhidhahu waladan. Same words. Same words. Maybe we'll adopt him, or maybe he can serve us, or we can take him as a child. What's remarkable to me is these conversations happened maybe centuries apart. and yet a child is involved, and the same exact words are being said. Maybe he can serve us, or we can take him as a child. And the Quran, the ayat are identical. Asa an yanfa'ana aw nattakhidahu waladan. Subhanallah. And guess what? Two options, right? It's a multiple choice. Option A, servant. Option B, what? Child. In Yusuf's story, option A. Option A, meaning he's a servant. In Musa's story, what did they do? They adopted him as a child. So you see the story with both options. One story with this option, one story with that option. So I wrote this down, so I'll read it because I have to. I'm up to 35 now. From above, you note there are two possible options. Either be raised as a servant or an adopted child. In the case of Yusuf, the servant option is chosen. In the case of Musa, the adoption option is chosen. Now they're youth. Yusuf alayhi salam is described as becoming a young man. And he said, when Allah says, when he reached his maturity, we gave him wisdom and knowledge. Thus we reward those who excel. Listen to this carefully. Yusuf alayhi salam was given, when he became a young man, he was given hukman, ilman, he was given wisdom and knowledge. I don't want to go too deep into it because we have a long list, but listen, a young man needs wisdom more than he needs knowledge. You can have a lot of knowledge and not a lot of what? Wisdom. So you have a kid who's getting 100 on every test. He has a lot of what? Knowledge. And he's driving 90 on the highway. What's he missing? Wisdom. If you have wisdom, then your knowledge will benefit you. This kid he's already qualified for pre-med, he's getting a full scholarship into med school, and he's doing cocaine. He's smoking. He knows more than anybody else the biological hazard this presents to his body. And yet, knowledge is there, what's not there? Wisdom is not there. Allah says, and by the way, when we're young, what do we get easily? Memorization is easy. Figuring things out is easy. Kids can learn apps easily, programming easily, music easily. They can learn weird languages easily. What's hard at that young age? Wisdom. Allah says something special about Yusuf. He says Allah gave him wisdom and then knowledge. Special kid, because some young men that have wisdom first, knowledge second, that's an amazing thing. Allah says the exact same thing about Musa alayhi salam. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ, only one difference, وَاسْتَوَى آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. SubhanAllah. But the only difference is, Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah did not highlight the strength of Yusuf. Allah highlighted the strength. وَاسْتَوَى. It became firm like the bark of a tree. That's Musa alayhi salam. By the way, his strength is going to play a role in the story, isn't it? When he's going to throw a punch, or when he's going to help women get their stuff, get their animals fed. So his strength plays a role, which is why it's mentioned. But other than that, their qualities are identical. And by the way, وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is how we reward those who excel. This is how we reward those who excel. Notice that Yusuf was excessively handsome, while Musa was excessively strong. Right? Yusuf alayhi salam has Jamal. Musa alayhi salam has what? Quwwah. You know, إِنَّ خَيْرَ مَنِ اسْتَأْجَرْتَ الْقَوِيُّ الْأَمِينُ. Okay. Perhaps the contrast suggesting the two most desirable qualities of youth, each of which can be a trial. Good looks can be a trial. Strength can be a trial. And by the way, if you don't have wisdom and you have good looks, I don't have to spell that out. If you don't have wisdom and you have a lot of strength, you're crushing beer cans on your forehead, or picking fights when you don't have to because you got too much adrenaline pumping through your body. What are you looking at, bro? I'm actually blind. What'd you say? Yusuf is, and so by the way, so Yusuf has beauty. Musa has what? Strength. Now listen, Yusuf is subsequently tried because of his appearance in the very next ayah. And Musa is subsequently tried in Surah Al-Qasas because of his strength in the very next ayah. What Allah will give you as a gift is what will become your test. Jamal was his gift, Jamal became his test. Quwwah was his gift, Quwwah became his test, and that's actually in the very next ayah in both. In Surah Yusuf, the immediate next ayah after he was given wisdom and knowledge and he reached mature age, then the lady tries to seduce him. And in the case of Musa alayhi salam, as soon as that's mentioned, then the scene happens where he punched a guy. It's the very next ayah. Okay? Now, Yusuf alayhi salam's employer calls him and says, hurry up. Remember the woman said, Haytalak, hurry up. Which is typical speech from an employer to a servant, but he can decipher it using, this is an interesting point, he can decipher it using his special gift, that she means something dubious about it. Now, let me explain this to you. Allah says about Yusuf alayhi salam that يُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. Allah will teach you interpretation of speech. Mufassirun say that means he can interpret dreams. But actually, it means more than that. Hadith means all kinds of speech. You know, sometimes somebody says to you, come here. And the tone which they said it, you can tell something is wrong. Some people have very sharp sense. I know they said, I mean, for example, people that are married for a long time, the wife asked the husband, how are you doing? He says, okay. She knows something's wrong. Because there was something in the K and the OK that gave it away. Or he didn't make eye contact and said okay. Or he was looking down when he said okay. Because okay can actually mean not okay at all, right? This is when you interpret the same word, in the dictionary it means okay. But actually it means not okay at all. You understand? He sees the wife of the minister, and by the way, she is the owner of the house. She tells him vacuum and clean the window and do the dishes. She tells him all the time, not vacuum, I made that up. Like, astaghfirullah, brother, they had no vacuums. Yes, please, go to comments. Listen, she's telling him, hurry up and do this, hurry up and do that, hurry up and do this, all day. Haytalak, 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 all day. This one time she says, haytalak, and he's like, nah, this one's trouble. I ain't coming. You understand? This is his special ability to see something that he sees every day, but this one is different. This is part of يُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. So this is the point that I wanted to highlight here. Let's contrast that with Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam approaches the scene of the two men fighting when his fellow Israelite brother cries out for help. Ironically, he hurries up. She said, hurry up in the other story. And Musa alayhi salam did what? He hurried up and uses his strength to throw a lethal punch. So on the one hand, you have Yusuf reading the situation exactly for what it is. And on the other hand, you have Musa alayhi salam misreading the situation and getting entangled in a mess. As a result, you have two possibilities. If you take time to analyze the situation and the speech before you take action, you might save yourself some trouble. And if not, you might end up doing something like inni dhalamtu nafsi. Rabbi inni dhalamtu nafsi faghfirli. Right? That's what Musa alayhi salam said. While Yusuf alayhi salam tries to do good by serving the master of the house, Musa alayhi salam tries to do good by serving enslaved Israelites. One is doing good by serving a master, the other doing good by serving slaves. Master contrasted with slaves. Yusuf alayhi salam is the fitna, the trial of Yusuf alayhi salam happened indoors. The trial of Musa alayhi salam happened outdoors. Yet both find only one eyewitness. One happened indoors, one happened outdoors, and they both find only one eyewitness. And by the way, in both, actually I mentioned it's my slide, okay. I have to hold myself because these are from my brain, but I want to go in the list so I don't miss anything. In both cases, the eyewitness has an evil intent. Let's go through the eyewitnesses. The only eyewitness to what happened is the minister's wife. But she's also the criminal. And she's also the only witness. So obviously she's going to frame him. On the other side, the only living witness is the guy that was calling Musa for help. The next day, he thinks Musa alayhi salam is coming after him. He's the one who testifies against him. He has evil intent. You know, إِن تُرِيدُ إِن تَكُونَ جَبَّارًا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا تُرِيدُ أَن تَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُصْلِحِينَ. You don't want to be, you're just a bully beating up people. Aren't you? أَتُرِيدُ أَن تَقْتُلَنِي كَمَا قَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا بِالْأَمْسِ. You want to kill me like you killed someone yesterday? You just said it out in the street in front of everybody, right? Just like the minister's wife said, what should we do with someone who wanted to do evil with your family? He wanted to have his way with your wife. What should you do with him? She called him out in public. He called him out in public. The same exact thing. Yusuf runs from his aggressor. Musa attacks an aggressor. Runs to an aggressor. One played defense, the other played offense. Yusuf alayhi salam's trial concerns zina. The accusation would be attempted zina. And the other one is what? Murder. Those are the two sins in the Quran that Allah mentions in this order. وَلَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. Qatl, zina. And the other place in Quran, he flips the order. He says, لا تقربوا الزنا ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق. Surah Al-Isra. He flips the order. So those are the two major sins, zina and murder. And those are the two. One is the accusation of zina, the other is the accusation of murder. When Yusuf alayhi salam says the words of reminder before any evil may be committed, meaning the wife of the minister says, hey Talak, come here. She wants to have her way with him. And he says, Ma'adallah, innahu rabbi ahsana maswaya. He basically says, and zalimun do not prosper. Innahu la yuflihu zalimun. I seek Allah's protection, Allah's refuge. Meaning there is a dhikr of Allah that should happen before you are thrown into sin. As you're about to be thrown into sin, what can you do? Dhikr of Allah. But maybe you're not always perfect. Sin happens. Now what do? You do what Musa alayhi salam did. Musa alayhi salam also did dhikr of Allah, but did he do it before the mistake or after the mistake? After the mistake, and he said, Rabbi inni zalamtu nafsi faghfir li. Master, I made a mistake. I wronged myself. Forgive me. So in the two, you basically have the entire guidance of sin. If you can catch yourself before sin, you make the dua. If you've made the sin, then you make the dua like Musa alayhi salam. And by the way, no sin is too big. No sin for Allah is too big. Musa alayhi salam took a life. And he said, forgive me. And Allah says, I forgave him. Immediately. فَغَفَرَ لَهُ. Then you could say, no, but Allah forgave him because he's a prophet. No, he wasn't a prophet yet. The prophet would happen when he went to the mountain. That happens years after this. He's just a young man right now. And Allah says, because he asked for sincere forgiveness, Allah immediately forgave him. So nobody should doubt. How do you know? People ask, how do you know Allah forgave me? The Quran's answer through the story of Musa is what? If you genuinely ask Allah to forgive you, then you don't get to doubt yourself. Allah forgave you. When you say, إِنِّي ظَلَمْتُ نَفْسِي فَاغْفِرْ لِي غَفَرَ لَهُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Of course you forgave him then. Certainly he is the ultimately forgiving. Anyway, in Yusuf's case, there are no witnesses, so forensic evidence was used to determine innocence. What's the forensic evidence? Sure. In Musa's case, there is a witness who incriminates Musa. So two kinds of evidence are used, right? Testimony and physical evidence. So Yusuf's case is physical evidence, and his case is testimony. Yusuf's innocence was called out in a private gathering, while Musa's guilt was shouted out in a private gathering, in a public gathering rather. In other words, it was determined that Yusuf is innocent, and inside the palace they said, "Yeah, we're sorry about this misunderstanding. Let's just let it go." And while Musa alayhi salam was called out publicly. Yusuf's actions are driven in part by his loyalty to the minister, just as Musa's actions are driven in part by his animosity towards Pharaoh and his family. Meaning Yusuf was loyal to his master. Musa alayhi salam hated the Pharaoh. That's why he punched the soldier. One did it out of love, the other did it out of hate. Yusuf had to be held back to not bring up what Yusuf had to hold back to not bring up what happened, while Musa alayhi salam on his own accord keeps the incident a secret. Both of them, one was told, keep this a secret, don't talk about it. Yusuf, a'rid an hada. Ignore this, don't talk about it. And Musa alayhi salam himself kept it a secret. He didn't tell anybody. In Yusuf's case, the testimony of another questioning the shirt ripped from behind proves his innocence. In the case of Musa, the testimony of another incriminates him. This is where things get interesting. One is proven innocent, the other is proven guilty. Which one is proven innocent? Yusuf. And Musa is proven guilty. Okay? And keep up with this. The one who's proven innocent goes to jail. And the one who's proven guilty gets away. The contrast between the two. Meaning, Allah's justice and people's justice doesn't work the same way. Allah has His own plan sometimes, and there are sometimes criminals who get away with things, and sometimes there are innocent people who end up in jail. That happens. And that's a reality. That's even a reality for prophets. Alayhimussalam. The minister's wife testifies falsely on the one hand as she character assassinates Yusuf. The con artist, though truthful about the accusation, engages in character assassination of Musa. Both accusers are clearly trying to cover up what they had actually done. After Yusuf a.s.'s second encounter, his only advocate, the minister, doesn't help him avoid prison. The only one who was on the side of Yusuf was who? The minister. But when he got thrown in jail, he forgot about it. Whereas Musa a.s.'s only advocate, his police chief friend, who came to him and said, "You need to get out of Egypt," helps him escape. In Yusuf's story, we learn about a group of elite women who are responsible for getting him jailed. You know about this? Women who cut their hands, right? There's a group of elite women that got in jail. While in Musa's story, we learn of elite men, police chiefs, mala, that plot a scheme to get him killed. One kind of oppression is jail, the other is getting killed. And there's a group in both. It is these women's misguided love and admiration that got Yusuf in trouble, while it was the misguided hate of the Pharaoh's police chiefs that got Musa in trouble. You see, Musa was from Bani Israel, and the police were from the Egyptians. And the Egyptians thought that they were the master class, and the Israelites were the slave class. But Musa is treated like a prince. That made them very upset. This guy's second-class citizen, we have to open the door for him. So when they got a chance to get after him, they tried to kill him. Without even telling Pharaoh. They tried to circumvent him and try to kill him. The scheming of the women was foreshadowed in the words of Yusuf's advocate, the minister. He said, "Hada min kaydikunna inna kaydakunna azim." You can scheme really well, he said, and they ended up scheming really well. By contrast, the scheming of the men was revealed by Musa's advocate, the police chief. So his friend also told him that they're scheming against you. Yusuf, though found innocent, is imprisoned after a second encounter. Musa, though found guilty, escapes after a second encounter. After being imprisoned, Yusuf meets two men that help him in prison. So that he talks to in prison. After escaping, Musa meets two women that he helps. Yusuf helped two men. Musa helped two women. Okay. By the way, Yusuf alayhi salam, what is his strength? What is his beauty, and what else? Interpretation of speech. What is Musa's gift? Strength. In prison, Yusuf uses his gift. And for the women, Musa uses his gift. Your gift can be a trial, we already established that. But your gift should also be used to provide a service. Right? So it'll be a trial, and once you can get away from fitna of your gift, then you put it to good use and you put it to service. The two men approach Yusuf while Musa approaches the two women. See the two? Sometimes people come and ask you for help. Other times you have to go and offer help to people. The two men ask Yusuf for help, and Musa asks the two women if he can help. Yusuf uses his special gift of interpretation to help the two women, while Musa uses his gift of strength to help the two women. Yusuf alayhi salam sees being approached by the two men as an opportunity to preach Islam. So he starts telling them about the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam and all of this, right? So he speaks to them at length about Allah and the religion of truth. Musa keeps the conversation with the two women to an absolute minimum. He went up to the two ladies and goes, "Ma khatbukuma, what is your deal? What's wrong with you?" That's all he said. And they gave him a talk, La nasqi hatta yusdira ri'a wa abuna shaykhun kabir. We can't feed our animals until this whole flock of men is done. Our father's too old to do this. That's what they said. He doesn't say, "Allow me to serve you in this capacity, for Allah has given me strength, and I shall take your animals and move these men like bugs." And no, he didn't give a speech. He just did it. He just did it. What that means is, it's kind of implied. With the opposite gender, keep the conversation to a minimal, and there's no need for you to do da'wah. Okay? But if the people of the same gender come to you, you can do da'wah, talk about the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. How many people reach out to me, "Brother, I'm giving da'wah to the sister, now we're ready to, things got a little crazy." How many? I can't even, and even before they text me the next line, I was like, "Things got a little crazy, how did you know?" Okay. Anyway, Yusuf alayhi salam sees being approached by the two men as an opportunity. I already mentioned that. One of these two men came back years later to retrieve Yusuf. He was in jail. Years later, "Yusuf, ayyuha Siddiq." Remember? And he came back. Did he come back on his own, or somebody, because he wanted something for the king, so he came back. One of those two women came back hours later to retrieve Musa. You see, everything in the story of Yusuf is quick, or slow. And everything in the story of Musa is quick. Mothers reunited quickly. He comes back, the lady comes back quickly and says, "Hey, my dad's calling you." In the story of Yusuf, families separated for many years. He goes in jail, and the guy, he said, "Hey, can you mention me when you go out?" That takes many years, and he comes back. Everything is slowed down in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam is hoping one of the two of men could come and help him, or mention him after they get released. Musa has no hopes of help from either of the two women, so he's pleasantly surprised when their father sends them back. Allah particularly mentions that the two men in prison were young men, fatayan. He mentions not just two men, he met two men, he said he met two young men. And the context makes it clear that the women in the story of Musa alayhi salam were not old ladies. They were young women. But Allah didn't say fatatan, He said imra'atan. Because it's kind of Allah protecting the discourse about women. Because when you say somebody, hey, young girl, then it's kind of suggestive. So Allah Azza wa Jalla protected their age and just said two women. Yusuf alayhi salam said to them that he'll be done helping them before the meal is over. He said, you're coming and asking me about this dream. Before lunch arrives, I will have told you. But I want to talk about some other things. That wasn't my phone. On the other hand, and by the way, he said what? I will help you before the next meal. And Musa alayhi salam helps the women after a drink. He was just drinking and then he helped them. So thus one dialogue revolves around a meal and the other one revolves around a drink. Yusuf expected him and is disappointed, but Musa didn't expect the girls to come back and he's pleasantly surprised. I mentioned that already. Yusuf was retrieved on his own insistence. Yusuf said, get me out of here. I'm not leaving until you ask me what happened with those women. He insisted to be taken out of prison. Musa was retrieved on the insistence of the woman's father. The servant who came to retrieve him shamelessly acted as Yusuf's friend. Yusuf, ayyuha Siddiq, buddy, if you're such a buddy, where you been for all these years? He didn't even tell the king, hey, by the way, there's a guy I met in prison. He's really good at this stuff. Let me go get him. No. He said, I can get you the interpretation. He's going to go to Yusuf, get the interpretation, come back and get a promotion. And he will never mention who. Yusuf. He has no shame. But he can't get Yusuf to say, hey, Yusuf, can you help me out here so I can get a promotion? By the way, stay in prison. No, so he has to make like he's his friend. He says, Yusuf, are you a Siddiq? Buddy, how you been? You doing okay? They still serve the same lunch or what? And then he wants to ask him. Yusuf alayhi salam, of course, saw through it. But the point is, he came back shamelessly. What a shameless guy to do that. He wasn't even embarrassed that he abandoned him all these years. On the flip account, when the woman came to Musa alayhi salam, tamshi ala istihya, she came so much full of shyness. She's reluctantly walking up to him. Yusuf is described to the two. Yusuf alayhi salam describes to the two men how blessed he is. He's sitting in prison, and he's saying, I am really blessed to be in the family of Ibrahim and Yaqub and Ishaq and Yaqub, and this is my Torah, this is my legacy that Allah has given me. Musa alayhi salam turns to Allah and describes how desperate he is. He says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. My back is broken, Ya Rabbi, just give me whatever, I'll take it. So one is in prison saying things are really good, and the other is in the desert saying, Ya Allah, I just need help, and both are okay. When somebody says, Ya Allah, I'm in a desperate situation, you don't give them a lecture. Hey, you should be grateful. You should look at all the things that are good and not complain to Allah. Yeah, you can complain to Allah. Musa alayhi salam. Sometimes you should be grateful. Sometimes you can complain. You have to find a balance between those two things. One does not erase the other. It's the complete spectrum, because we're not angels. We can't always be grateful. Sometimes we have to complain to Allah. إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. We have to do that to Allah. But you can't only complain to Allah. You have to be grateful also. So it's this balanced picture between the two supplications of the two prophets. Yusuf alayhi salam asked for help from a human being, and he wasn't helped. Musa alayhi salam asked who for help? Allah for help, and he got help. He didn't ask the women for help. Allah sent them. And he asked the men for help, and he was disappointed. The man came back acting extremely friendly, while the women came back acting extremely shy. The man came back to take advantage of Yusuf, while the woman came back to compensate Musa, to be fair to Musa. The inmate was supposed to help Yusuf, didn't tell the king that he was going to go to Yusuf, only that he will get the answer. He wanted to take credit for himself. The daughters, by contrast, went back and told their father how honest and accountable Yusuf alayhi salam was and what happened, and thus the father summoned him. Yusuf alayhi salam meets the two inmates, but the story continues with only one of them. Right? He met two people, but the story only goes on with one of them. Musa alayhi salam meets two women, but the story continues with, he got married to one of them, so the story definitely continued. Yusuf stayed in prison thereafter for a number of years in single digits, while Musa alayhi salam was offered housing and work for 8 to 10 years, double digits. Yusuf alayhi salam proposes that he will take the job of treasurer. Musa is proposed to that he get married and work for the family. One offers himself, the other is given an offer. Yusuf comes back to the king's court. Now they're back in Egypt. When Yusuf comes back out of prison, he came to prove his innocence, while Musa came back to the Pharaoh's court to admit his guilt. One came to say, I'm innocent. The other came to say, I am what? Guilty. I did it. I did it. He openly said it. Yusuf refused to come out until his matter was resolved, and Musa agreed to go back with her and get paid right away. Yusuf was given his job based on knowledge and wisdom. Musa was given his job based on his capability and strength and honesty. This covers the entire spectrum of why someone should be hired. Knowledge, wisdom, ability, honesty. Those are the 4 qualities you need in an employee, and you have the perfect employee. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Yusuf helped with words and Musa helped with actions. On a side note, Yusuf's story highlights how a man and a woman should not come together. Yusuf's story has how a woman and a man should not come together. Musa's story, by contrast, highlights how a woman and a man should come together. On another side note, Yusuf's brothers described their dad as a sheikh. Sheikh Kabir. Right? Yusuf's brothers described their dad as a Sheikh Kabir. And the girls described their dad as a Sheikh Kabir. These are the only instances of Sheikh Kabir in the entire Quran. Yusuf came back to the Egyptian palace at the request of the king, and Musa came back to the Egyptian palace at the request of the king of all kings. Musa is reunited with his brother Harun after years of separation. Yusuf is reunited with Binyamin after years of separation. Musa needs Harun to be his strength, but Yusuf keeps Binyamin to be Binyamin's strength. Yusuf brings him divine knowledge. Yusuf brings the kingdom divine knowledge that will save Egypt from disaster. Musa brings with him divine signs that rain disaster upon Egypt for their rebellion. One came to save Egypt, the other came to destroy Egypt if they don't change their ways. Yusuf becomes a part of the government. Musa becomes the resistance movement against the government. Yusuf's counsel is heeded by the king. Yusuf gives advice, the king listens. Musa's counsel is disregarded by the king, Fir'aun. Yusuf's counsel is meant to save the people in this world, because the drought will happen where? In this world. Musa's counsel is meant to save people in the Akhirah. Prophet's job is actually, and Islam is there to help people in this world and in the next world. Yusuf's job is dunya, Musa's job is Akhirah. SubhanAllah. Complete balance. Yusuf's counsel is, Yusuf returned to Egypt to save the kingdom. Musa returned and annihilated the kingdom. Yusuf's brother is helpful by staying silent. You know, Binyamin is told what? Stay quiet. Musa's brother is given the job because he's afsahu minni lisanan, he's a better speaker. He speaks better. That's why I need him. By the way, ironically, he stayed silent anyway. Musa did all the talking. You don't find anywhere Harun alayhi salam speaking other than please let my beard go and my head go. Like, you don't really hear Harun alayhi salam talking. So, Yusuf's king says to bring him because he wants him as a personal aid for himself exclusively. Astakhlishu li nafsi. I want him for myself, Yusuf, for myself. And the king Fir'aun says, I will personally kill Musa. Daruni aqtul Musa. It is through Yusuf that the sons of Israel were settled in the land of Egypt. It is through Musa that the sons of Israel left the land of Egypt. Almost done, guys, like 2 minutes left. I know, this is long. 91 now. The blessings of settlement turned into a curse of slavery. And the curse of exile turned into the blessing of freedom. Yusuf alayhi salam, when they settled, they were honored in the land. And that great luxury life they had, living with the minister, Yusuf alayhi salam, turned into what? Slavery. Banu Israel became slaves over time. And then, so good life became hard life. Then they left Egypt. And they're in the desert. Is that easy life or hard life in the desert? Hard life, but it came with one blessing that's more powerful than anything else. It came with freedom. Yusuf alayhi salam's story began outside Egypt and ended inside. I mentioned that before. Musa's story began inside Egypt and ended outside. That's still part of 92. Yaqub, Israel, meaning Yaqub meaning Israel, and his sons have to come to Egypt for food in the story of Yusuf. And the sons of Israel wander about looking for food outside Egypt in the story of Musa alayhi salam. Yusuf was caused pain by his own brothers, the sons of Yaqub, sons of Israel, while he was later wronged by members of the Egyptian elite. Okay, so there's two groups that did wrong to Yusuf. One, his own family, his own people, Banu Israel. Literally, the children of Israel, meaning children of Yaqub. They did wrong to him first. Then who did wrong to him? The Egyptian government did wrong to him. So two kinds of wrong. When you come to Musa alayhi salam in reverse order, Musa was wronged by the Egyptian elite. First, they caused him to leave Egypt to survive. He was later wronged by his own brethren, the sons of Israel, after they crossed the water, because they refused to comply with his instructions. Yusuf, at the end of it all, says to his brothers that there is no harm to come on them and that he is reunited with them. لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. At the end of his career, the sons of Israel are united with Yusuf. Musa alayhi salam, at the end of it all, asks Allah, فَفْرُقْ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ الْقَوْمِ الْفَاسِقِينَ. I don't want anything to do with them. I want a divorce from these people. I'm done. I had enough. One story ends with them united, Bani Israel. The other separated from Bani Israel. And so, there are some other side notes, like, things, if you study the story, this is sort of an assignment of your own. If you look at some of the things that Yusuf said in his story, you can almost pretend it's Musa saying it. إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ مِلَّةَ قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Yusuf says, I have left the religion of people that don't believe in Allah and they deny the Akhirah. Who could say that to Musa alayhi salam? Musa alayhi salam says, Ya qawmi lima tu'dhunani, my own people, why are you causing me pain? Who could say that to Yusuf alayhi salam? Rabbi najjini min al-qawmi adh-dhalimin. Musa alayhi salam says, Ya Allah, rescue me from wrongdoing people. Who could say that to Yusuf? So it's actually a long list of things that Yusuf said that Musa alayhi salam it applies to Musa. And a long list of things that Musa alayhi salam said that apply to Yusuf alayhi salam. So this was a snippet. I know I said 30 minutes, I lied. Yeah. But the point was, I am so fascinated by how intricately the stories of the Quran connect with each other and how through comparison and contrast and profound lessons are taught. I collected here 95 comparisons. Okay, I didn't give you the lessons behind these comparisons. I just gave you the comparisons themselves. This is just this contrasted with that. Sometimes I slipped in a lesson here or there. My hope is eventually to write a book on this and to stop at every one of these comparisons and say, what is the wisdom behind this one? What can we learn from this one? What can we learn? Because each of them is a purpose. It's purposeful. And when you do this, the last thing I'll say, when you do this, you realize when Allah says, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. We tell you the best of all stories. Nobody tells stories like we do. I mean, for Allah to connect these two stories in this way, this was never talked about in the Bible. This is not talked about in Jewish scholarship. These are Jewish prophets, according to them. Joseph and Moses. They don't have this. They don't have this comparison. They don't have this connection that Allah gave in the Quran. يَقُصُّ عَلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ أَكْثَرَ الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. Allah tells the Israelites so much of what they themselves disagree in. It's incredible the way Allah tells. Incredible the way Allah tells the story. The last thing I want to share with you as an invitation is that I told you in the beginning, some of you might not know those stories. And even if you do, hopefully you appreciate that I try to find in the stories in the Quran the things that are beyond the translation that we see. Like there's so much powerful stuff going on that we just overlook. So on Bayina TV, I put together a section called Story Nights. And I've done several chapters of the life of Musa alayhi salam in line with the Quran, like Surah Al-Qasas, like Surah Taha. And those are actually events I did around the world. And they're different from a lecture. Like when I give a lecture, I'm giving you information, knowledge, etc. When I'm telling a story, I'm telling a story. I actually instruct people, don't take notes, just listen to a story. It's as weird as if you're going to watch a movie and you're taking notes. You're awkward if you do that. So I'm encouraging you and your families to go watch those story nights on Bayina.tv, especially starting with Yusuf alayhi salam. Come back to this after that. The Night to Remember, there's a story called Forging a Hero. That's since from when he was a baby to the time he got married. That part of his story in the Quran. Then when he met with Allah, what happened there. And currently I'm traveling the world giving the story night of how he debated Fir'aun. And how did he cross the water? How did Quran describe that part of his life? Right? So, but each one of them is so fascinating, it's so powerful. Man, I tell you, we are doing an injustice to the powerful stories of the Quran. We really are. They are incredible. And I really urge you, especially the parents that are watching here, or if you are older siblings, if you can encourage your kids to watch some of those story nights that I've done, it'll do wonders for them. I promise you. I mean, kids come up to me all the time and tell me they love those story nights, so I hope you take advantage of that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Right, You're welcome. So